Damage creep has been getting crazier and crazier in League. Everybody kills each other in about 0.5 seconds, and there are hardly any restrictions anymore on who does damage. Whether you're a tank, a bruiser, an AD carry, or a support, you deal a lot of damage. One class specifically, though, has an issue with this. Mages. But wait, aren't mages supposed to be a high damage source class? Well, yeah, they're supposed to be. Lately, not so much. It's not an issue of not having enough damage in your kit, but rather an issue of being able to survive for long enough to actually deal any of it. You see, with all this damage creep, mages have been left in the dust. They have Zhonya's and maybe Banshees, and to counter this insane burst that's in the game, you need more. Zhonya's can protect you for about 2 seconds, but then as soon as you get out of it, you just get one hit anyway. Riot noticed this issue and they wanted to fix it. But really quickly, before we go over what their fix was and why it completely failed, I want to take a quick look at the history of items in League and why they're an important part of the game. Items have been a contentious topic in League of Legends for as long as I can remember. From Infinite Stack Sunfire Cape, to Wriggle's Lantern, to Feral Flare, people have always found something to hate about the current state of items. And to be completely fair, a lot of these items were ridiculous, and Feral Flare was honestly the most ridiculous thing ever. Since the inception of League, Riot has been changing, tweaking, adding, and removing items from their game to fit with their current and design goals. And fairly so. In the MOBA genre, and League of Legends specifically, items are one of the most important aspects of the game to have balanced, or at least to find some harmony in the imbalance. They're how you feel your character power up, and they're how you get that good dopamine from being able to 1v5 without just having to have pure skill. Like, if you're a macro-focused player and you farm really well, you can win fights because of that gold you've generated from farming. The problem is that if they shift certain design goals, which they do, or if the community finds a way to abuse these items, it can cause a lot of havoc on the Rift. For example, we can take a look at one of the oldest instances of item abuse, Sunfire Cape. Way back when League was still the small kid on the block and it hadn't been adopted as this global phenomena game, Sunfire Cape was a stackable item. The item did 30 damage per second, and if you were doing this cheese strat, you would generally build 4 or 5 of them, which comes out to about 150 damage per second. On top of all of this, invisibility worked a little bit differently. Today, camouflage breaks and an enemy can see you when you come too close, but back then it didn't work like that. It worked like Kha'Zix ult does these days. You had to actually input an attack in order for your stealth to break. Passive damage from items, like Sunfire Cape however, did not break this stealth. 1 + 1 = 2, and Evelynn could stay in her perma-stealth forever and run around and follow you, killing you in as little as 15 seconds with her stacked Sunfires. You didn't even actually need the stealth half of the cheese for it to work either. There were countless times when a 5-stack team of tanks would build 20 Sunfire Capes between them, and they would deal like 800 damage per second combined during a teamfight, while still being super tanky from all the defensive stats that it gives. Sunfire also had another abusable trait. It persisted even through revive animations. So if you built a Guardian Angel, it just did even more damage, and you'd pop back up with 40% health, ready to burn them again for another 20 seconds. The good thing is, today, item abuse to this scale doesn't really exist anymore. Say what you want about Riot and about League of Legends, but they've rooted a lot of this stupid stuff out of the game over the years. Today, the problem with items is a completely different beast. You see, over the years we've gotten entitled. Many people didn't play in the days when League was a completely imbalanced nightmare, although there is an argument to be made that it was more fun back then too. No, these days the problem lies with how interactive, game-changing, and fun the items feel to use. With the Season 11 item rework, a lot of people were really pissed off. And I mean really pissed off, like enough to quit the game, at least for a time. The Mythic system wasn't globally received well, and with the removal of many items in the game, and the imbalanced state that they released it in, it didn't really feel like you had any choice in build paths. Trinity Force was pretty garbage, Eclipse was broken, Duskblade was Duskblade, and we had whatever the hell this is. The items were incredibly powerful, that can't be argued, and the fact of the matter was it felt like there was no real opportunity to change your build up, aside for maybe a few items at the end of the game if the game even went that long. Mythics were just so expensive and so strong, by the time you hit 1 or 2 items the game would generally be over. They were so strong in fact that the game really started to feel like it was less about the champions you pick and more about the items, meaning the item literally felt stronger than your character. Which reminded me of an old League event called Black Market Brawlers. It also felt in many ways as if the identity of the champions were stripped, or fundamentally changed. Like take Darius and Garen for example. They were designed around being incredibly powerful bruisers. If they could stick on you, or if you directly traded blows with them, they would generally win the fight. But with the old, new Stridebreaker, they had a dash implanted directly into their kit, fundamentally changing the way the game was played. Another shining example is AD carries. They're designed around the notion that they dish out a ton of damage. But as a trade-off, they are really squishy. Some have self-peel and dashes embedded into their kits, like Tristana, but even that comes at a trade-off of DPS, and they are added with that in mind. Gale Force gave every single AD carry a dash. The Garen would chase the Jhin, and before the rework, this fight would go in a rather predictable way, the way that the initial champion design was intended. Garen would chase the Jhin, and if the Jhin didn't ore block well, or if the Jhin missed his W or the Garen sidestepped it, Garen would kill him. Otherwise, Jhin would almost certainly be fine. But then, all of a sudden, Garen can dash at Jhin, and Jhin can dash away, causing both players to have more reliance on the item than on their inherent kits themselves. And I believe that in part this is just due to the fact that most champions in the game were made before the item rework, without the thought there may be super OP items added to the game sometime in the future. It really is just a treacherous path to navigate. I will say, however, that since the items were released, it has gotten a lot better. There's still some wacky builds, combos, and situations, but it has gotten better, and I really do hope that it continues to. I wouldn't mind if the items were tuned down a bit just as a sweeping action across the board. These days, everything is a stat stick that also generally provide a crazily powerful extra effect, as well as cause all the other items to gain even more stats on completion. I get what Riot was going for with the whole mythic idea, trying to play into people's desire to really feel power spikes and to really be able to see when they jump in power, but it feels like a system that's better left for legendary items in an MMORPG as opposed to League of Legends. Anyways, my point before about these items feeling like they really strip your choice to really customize your build path due to linear use cases and lack of items in total, Riot noticed this too, and they decided to add some new items. There are problems with a few of them, but I wanted to focus on one in particular. Crown of the Shattered Queen was added as a way for squishy control and poke mages to be able to survive the insane damage creep that has been prevalent throughout League for these last few years. But with the amount of sustain and healing in the game, and the fact that everyone one-shots each other, it really pushed immobile poke mages out of the meta. I mean, I guess Ziggs and Xerath are still around mainly as an AD carry and a support respectively, but they were originally so many more mages you could play mid, like Zyra or Morgana. And before you go off in the comments, yes, I know that Xerath is busted right now because of First Strike, but that's a topic for another video. I'm just using him right now as an example of why Crown was completely failed in its intended use case. So anyways, the idea is that Crown added a way for these mages who didn't have inherent survivability in their kits to be able to survive the crazy burst by assassins, AD carries, bruisers, tanks, supports. The item was meant to allow mages to actually contribute meaningfully to their team as a mid laner. And the first qualm I had with this when I saw the item change is that it would never feel good to build. Mythics are a keystone item, the most powerful item that you'll build in a game, or at least they should be. If you have to build preemptively defensively, and you require this item to keep you alive so that you can do damage, it just doesn't feel fun. Like, personally, I'd rather have a Ludens or a Liandry's or a Gore Drinker that really makes me feel like an absolute monster, instead of having to settle for an item that you need to build just so you can run away better. So the intended use for the item seems not the most interactive. What about the practical use? What actually happened when the item came out? It was co-opted by many of the champions that it was made to counter. Champions like Sylas and Kassadin immediately started building Crown, noticing that on top of their insane mobility, sustain, and base stats they have in their kit, this item also made them even tankier upon entering a fight. And champions like Ziggs and Xerath just went on building the items they always have, being pretty much as useless as they've always been. And then a new thing happened, something that I did not expect, which is that pretty much every AD carry that had an ability power scaling went on to build Crown too, like Kai'Sa, Varus, Ezreal, etc. And still, the role and sub-role that it was designed for didn't build it. Yeah, Crown was kind of a complete failure. And what came out with Crown was Even Shroud, Axiomark, Shadowflame, Fimbulwinter, along with a host of other reworked items. I could go over every single one individually, but I could also sum it up pretty accurately by saying that some of them are donkey and some of them are busted, specifically in certain situations. At the end of the day, I think that Riot could fix a lot of these issues, and I hope that they cut back on the power of mythic items, they add more legendary items to choose from, and they found a way to expedite builds, specifically for mages who almost never get to full build. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Like, subscribe as we're a small channel and we're trying to grow, and then take care, and I'll see you guys on the next video.